Ever since 2-star dungeons came out, I've seen many people struggle to clear it with random matchmaking. That is either due to random players being badly geared or just not understanding the mechanics. After witnessing these same problems myself on my main 3800 combat power character and being gatekept by these players wasting my time, I decided to make a video where I will go over each of the 4 current 2-star dungeons as well as the 5th one that will be added next week and give you some general tips and tricks to have more efficient clears. To make it as realistic as possible, I have recorded this footage on my alt, which is 3000 combat power and only has 2 fully traded weapons, while the rest of the gear is very lackluster without any relevant traits. On top of that, the alt has only 8600 HP, which is very low for 2-star dungeons, but still doable. Starting off with everyone's favorite, Carmine Rage Island. Immediately you can see what type of group I got after getting wiped on these normal mobs with the red mark mechanic. They clearly see I have the mark, but they all decided to burst and AoE all the mobs at once, resulting in a wipe within the first 30 seconds. At the memory mini-boss, I always memorize the first 4 colors from the entrance to the right and I keep repeating it in my head. Then a color pops up and you know where it is. The second mini-boss shouldn't really give you any problems, as long as you don't stack the red AoE on top of each other and you push the explosive bombs off the platform. On the boss, depending which class you play, you can pretty much control the whole fight and mechanics. As I'm a ranged DPS, I always stay the furthest away from the boss for one reason: the dodge roll charge mechanic. I always take the first charge because I can dodge it easily and then the boss charges to 2 other furthest targets. Make sure that you know who the furthest player will be to bait the first charge and always position on the opposite side of that player so the boss doesn't charge right through you. The mechanic is really simple, but somehow people manage to mess it up. The boss will pull 4 players that are furthest away. I am always standing furthest away, so I get pulled last, which means that I will be targeted first by the AoE. This way, by being first, I can control the first safe zone and make it easier for the second targeted player. The player that has axe above its head will always be the second target, so the boss can turn randomly depending which side is the axe player positioned. The flying axe that follows one player will also almost always target the same player that has axe above the head, as it always targets the second furthest player. This is why the tank should try to be the second furthest away, which is achieved by everyone else playing close to the boss. The healer should always be next to the boss so they don't get pulled and they don't get chased by flying axes, so they can focus on healing the target with the axes. And if you say, how can a tank be the second furthest when he has to stand next to the boss? Well, the answer is simple. The boss will always go into the mechanic after he does the dodge roll charging mechanic 2 times. After the big AoE spin, he always goes into the mechanic, except the first mechanic literally at the start. So a tank can simply stay away from the boss as soon as the spin ends, while healers hug the boss so they don't get pulled. And if you get the axe above your head and flying axe following you, just simply start running around fully morphed. If the healer is good, they will be able to keep you alive as the axe does dot damage until the mechanic finishes, while the flying axe explodes after second smash. These are pretty much all the things I've noticed that people struggle the most with. Void Waste can be really easy or really hard depending on the group. Getting to the boss is very straightforward, just kill everything. At the boss you don't even need to have 2 people at each beam, as this was nerfed so hard. One player can hold it for the entire duration before mechanic and you will never reach 30 stacks. So you don't really need to alternate with another player if you don't want to. The main problem I see with many players is bad positioning of the red pulling AoE. This is why I, again, play the furthest away from the boss so the red eye can target me and I can safely place it away. After 40% HP, 2 furthest players get targeted by this, so here is how I do it. Since I always hold one beam by myself and I am the furthest away, I always get the red eye. What I do is simply move all the way to the horn object where the beam starts, I wait for the eye to disappear and then I morph and run forward close to the boss. This way I have enough room to keep blocking the beam, never dropping it, and I'm in the safe spot from the pool while other players are also safe. But in general you can drop it anywhere at the edge. The second most problematic thing is yellow eye, which is the classic HP check mechanic. I do believe it does around 9 to 10k damage to DPS players, so the only way not to get one-shot is to run close to the boss and get the defense buffs from tanks and healers. If neither tank or healer use the defense buff, you will most likely get one-shot, just don't stack on top of one another. And the third thing that gets people killed is the mechanic itself, where a random melee player will manage to take the mechanic aggro away from an experienced tank and completely fail it by missing the orbs and killing himself. Just simply never stay closer to the boss than the tank. The boss always targets the closest player, so you can simply always rely on your tanks. But if you do get the mechanic, then just look where the two orbs are placed, turn the boss towards one orb and then simply wait for the boss to kinda crouch and then start moving in the direction of the second orb. All that by staying close to the boss and running in circle. Other than these three things, Void Waste Dungeon is just a general DPS check. Island of Terror starts like this. Fly to the right brazier, kill the mobs there, do not aggro anything else. Then activate the brazier and kill the first mini-boss. If you do pull many mobs, the best would be to wipe and restart. After the door opens, you don't need to save all three merchants. In my guide I said you have to do all three, but Amazon nerfed it for global. Now all you do is run to the left side, kill 2 mobs on the merchant, then kill 2 mobs following you, then kill 2 mobs after dropping down to the mini-boss, and then kill the mini-boss. He does fire waste 2 times, so just jump over it. Before 3rd mini-boss you can kill all the mobs there, but generally you need to kill the first 2 mobs and simply dodge the 3 in the middle. At the boss it's preferred if the party leader can mark each geyser just in case. The main issue I see here is that either the fog doesn't get cleared properly at each geyser, so you don't see which one is active, and not being fast enough to press 1 to dig underground when the boss tries to eat you during the rat mechanic. What I always do is I pick one geyser and I fully clear it myself. I always stand on the geyser or close to it, so if the boss drops a meteor on me, that one meteor can clean the geyser and then I clear the second geyser with the fire debuff. The one general tip is for the tanks who should never try to clean the geysers, especially after the second meteors. Because if the tank moves away from the boss will start doing dodge roll fury attacks until the tank gets close to him again. And Valley of Slaughter is actually laughable how easy it is and how this dungeon is even a 2-star. The hardest part in the whole dungeon is organizing crowd control effects on the 3 shamans. Just remember that Dagger Shadow Escape skill has a silence which also works on these shamans. And the only thing that can kill a player at the boss is the healer not healing properly, or the player just eating all the meteors, missing all the blocks, and generally just being very bad at the game. And lastly, I want to go over the 5th dungeon, Torture Chamber of Screams, because I know that many will struggle, and since I made a short guide, I do believe a more detailed explanations are needed. At the start, the tank plays a crucial role if you want to speed through it. Tank would aggro all the mobs, while the 3 abominations need to be killed by 5 other players. If your tank isn't comfortable with this, then simply take your time killing everything. The first mini-boss is the Axeman, which is easy to kill, but drops an important item for the next puzzle. One player will always need to be the Axeman by picking up the axe. First go to the next part where the cages are. Open the cages and clear all the mobs. Then go back to the bottom of the stairs and on the wall you will see 4 red symbols. Memorize them or write them in chat, but everyone can see those 4 symbols. In this case, the symbols read from left to right, M, R, P, T. It will always be these 4 symbols, just in different order. Then if your party doesn't understand the order of the cages, it always goes from the left to the right, cage 1, cage 2, cage 3 and cage 4. Then as an Axeman, press 3 and you will see those same red symbols inside cages on the wall. Also you will notice that in each cage there will be an object on the wall that players will need to interact with in a very specific order. First, as an Axeman you need to set that specific order, which you base it off the red symbols on the wall. Since the order is MRPT, first you look for a cage that has M, then a cage that has R, then a cage that has P, and finally a cage that has T inside. In my case, cage 2 had the M symbol, cage 1 had R symbol, cage 4 had P symbol, and cage 3 had T symbol. Meaning you will want to write in chat the numbers 2, 1, 4, 3, indicating the order of cages. After the order is established, 4 players will go into each cage and interact with the object on the wall to activate the timer. After all 4 objects are glowing red, the timer will start, and only then order you wrote in chat matters, not before activating after the timer starts. When you hear the ticking noise and the sounds, the player in cage 2 interacts with the object first. After that, there will be notification on top of your screen, and then the player in cage 1 interacts with the object. After that, player in cage 4, and lastly, player in cage 3 interacts with the object, which will open and unlock the door to the next room. If you fail the order, the cages will close and mobs will spawn, meaning you will have to do all over again. This part will be very hard if you don't have multiple people who understand what they are supposed to do. If other people have a hard time understanding which cage is which, simply use party pin and mark all the cages. The next part is fairly easy, where all you need to do is kill mobs inside the red circle on the ground to fill in the devices. When a device is full, it will gain a white health bar and it will play a song which aggroes mobs to it. Don't let the mobs destroy the device, otherwise you have to start filling it up again. After all 3 devices are filled, the portal to mini-boss opens, which is pretty straightforward. Green means safe, red means danger, but even if you die, just respawn and teleport back in. Now that you got through all of that, it's time for the boss. I am basing all of the mechanics from the Korean footage that I have, so there is likely a chance that Amazon will do some ninja nerfs to this as well. As every 1-star and 2-star dungeons now have the first mechanic happening very early in the fight, it is safe to assume that this dungeon will also have the first mechanic after a few normal patterns. That's why I'm going to explain the mechanic first. Behind the boss, when you enter, there are 5 blood vials, which do get filled up as the boss does certain attacks. When the mechanic starts, the ground will go dark and 3 zombies will spawn chasing 3 random players. At the same time, 1 player should interact with one of the full vials to empty it. Emptying the vial will put the number above the zombie head indicated with vertical lines. If a zombie is chasing you, it means you have to do the mechanic. The number of lines above the zombie head indicates the order how each player needs to position from the boss. 1 line means the player chased by that zombie needs to hug the boss or stay close to it. 2 lines means that the player needs to be further away from the 1-line player, and lastly, 3 lines means that player needs to be further away from the 2-line player. You don't need to stand in a straight line one behind another, all that matters is that 1 is the closest to the boss, 3 is furthest away from the boss, and 2 can be anywhere in between 1 and 3. After 50% HP, it gets a little bit tricky as there will be 5 zombies with vertical lines, meaning the same principle is applied. 1 hugs the boss, 5 is furthest away, and then 2, 3, 4 have to be very careful how they position. But the general tip here is that if you are number 2, simply just stand right behind number 1, and if you are number 4, stand right in front of number 5. This way number 3 can have freedom and position anywhere between 2 and 4. The players who position incorrectly get 1 shot, but knowing Amazon, it was probably nerfed and it won't 1-shot you. Also, the zombies that are chasing you deal no damage, they only can CC you, but you can block it by using your Q defensive skills. So just don't panic and run around like a headless chicken trying to dodge the zombies, they do not deal damage. Focus on positioning and focus on your order. After the mechanic, the boss will likely follow the same attack pattern. The fight always continues with the dodge roll fury attack followed by several normal patterns targeting the tank. After that he drops rain of arrows on 3 random players. Just keep moving and dodging them. Straight after that he marks several players with a red line above their heads, which will then summon a cone-shaped attack on those players' location. These hurt a lot, so try not to overlap them. Straight after the boss will disappear and summon spinning blades on each player. The tank or healer needs to use the defensive skill damage reduction buff, otherwise everyone will take damage. If you are taking 0 damage from this, it means the buff was used correctly. At the same time, this attack is filling up the blood vials, so it is important to drain 1 vial from time to time by interacting with them, otherwise the boss repeats the spinning blade attack and gets empowered. After he reappears, 1 player will be teleported to the side and is paralyzed while the boss teleports to the opposite side of that player. The boss then runs towards paralyzed player and needs to be blocked 2 times to prevent a wipe attack on that player. Everyone needs to group up in front of the paralyzed player and block. Straight after that, group up behind the boss with the tank standing at the front. The boss will do a dodge roll fury attack and after that a minigun attack on a random player. If everyone is standing behind the tank, he will block the minigun damage. The minigun also fills up the blood vials, so have one player empty the vials straight after, otherwise he will do the empowered spinning blade attack. The only tip I can give you for these normal patterns is that you always stay on the move. Once you remember the patterns, it will be easy to understand what comes next. Hopefully this gives you more details and explanations into each dungeon and makes it easy to clear with random groups. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments. Thank you for watching, and if you are interested in the short guides, they are all on my channel, and if this helps you, don't forget to subscribe.